For today's Pamper project, we'll be looking at the Nenloth Washcloth. The pattern for this project will be in the video description just below this video you are currently watching. For this particular project, I use Bendigo Woolen Mills 10-ply cotton. It's a slightly thinner cotton than 10-ply, so I used a 4mm crochet hook, a pair of scissors and a darning needle to sew in the ends. Please grab your materials and get ready to join me. To begin the washcloth, we need to chain 38. I begin my slip knot by putting my yarn over my hand, holding it in place with my two lower fingers, thumb at the top, cross it over to form an X, continue wrapping, hold that with my little finger. My hook goes under the first strand, over the second, and I pull that through. Continue lifting that up and release my left hand, and then I can pull the strands apart to make that a secure slip knot. We need to chain 38. 1, 2, 3. Another tip I find useful is I lift my thumb up every 3 chains. That keeps my chains consistent with an even tension. 4, 5, 6. You can pause the video here and I will see you when you have finished your 38 chains for the foundation row. Just finishing off my chains, I have 35, 36, 37, 38. And as you can see, quite a consistent foundation row. Our row 1 is single crochet into every single chain. We skip our first chain from the hook, that's this one here, and we work into our second one. I'm going to just work through one loop of each chain. This is my first single crochet for the row, so I'm going to add a stitch marker. This helps me identify where to end my next row. And we single crochet into every chain across the whole foundation row. You can pause the video here and I will meet you at the end of row 1 after you've completed 37 single crochets. Just finishing off row 1 with my last few single crochets. I've counted my single crochets as well, and I know that this one in that last chain is my 37th single crochet, which matches with the pattern. What I'm going to do at the end of this row is add a stitch marker on top of that single crochet, just so it will help me know where to begin the next row. For row 2, we turn our work. Just going to turn that straight. We chained 3, 1, 2, 3, and this counts as our first double crochet for the row. So I no longer need to work in this very first stitch because this double crochet counts as the first stitch. So I can remove this stitch marker, taking note of that's the first stitch, so I'm going to be working into this second one. What I need to do is a double crochet into the next stitch. Then we're going to skip 2 stitches, skipping this one and this one, and in the next stitch we're going to do 3 puff stitches. So yarn goes over the hook, into the stitch, yarn over, bring it back. With a puff stitch I raise my hook a little bit. As you can see, a bit of a gap there. It makes it easier to pull the yarn through at the end of the puff stitch. Yarn over again, back into the stitch, yarn over, bring it back. We need to do that a total of 3 times, so one more. Yarn over, into the stitch, yarn over, bring it back, raise it again, and we should have 7 loops on our hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we do. So what we need to do now is yarn over and bring that through all 7 loops. Once we've done that, chain to finish the puff stitch. We need to do 3 of those into this same stitch. So again, yarn over into the stitch, yarn over, bring it back. Don't forget a bit of height. Yarn over, through the stitch, yarn over, bring it back. Yarn over, through the stitch, yarn over, bring it back. That will be 7. Then I yarn over and through all 7 stitches. If you're finding this part tricky, 2 tips are chain to finish. Make sure you lift your hook up a bit after you've put your yarn over and brought it back. The second one is turn your hook slightly side to side when you're moving it back through the stitches. I find that that helps. We need to do one more puff stitch. Yarn over in there 3 times. So 1, 2 and 3. Yarn over, bring that through, turning my hook side to side. Does make it a bit easier. Yarn over and close. From here we're going to skip 2 stitches again. So this is our very next stitch. We skip that and the next one, and we're going to do a double crochet into the next 2 stitches. So 1 double crochet in here and 1 double crochet into the next stitch. This is our repeating pattern. So here I'm going to skip 2 stitches and do 3 puff stitches into this next space, skip 2 stitches and 2 double crochets into the next 2 stitches. So I'm going to show you one more time how to do the cluster of puff stitches, and then I'll get you to repeat that pattern for the rest of the row. So skip 2, 1, 2, 3 puff stitches into this stitch here. Yarn goes over into the stitch, yarn over, bring it back, yarn over into the stitch, yarn over, bring it back, that's 2, yarn over into the stitch, yarn over, bring it back, that's 3, yarn through there, chain to close. Again, yarn over into the stitch, yarn over, bring it back, yarn over, again, that's 2, and that's 3, yarn over, bring it through, chain to close. One more time, yarn over into the stitch, yarn over, bring it back, yarn over into the stitch, yarn over, bring it back, yarn over into the stitch, yarn over, bring it back, pull that yarn through, chain to close. So what I'm going to get you to do is to pause the video here and continue to repeat this pattern all the way along. So you'll skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, do 2 double crochets into the next stitch, 1 double crochet here, 1 double crochet there, skip 2 stitches, cluster of puff stitches there, skip 2 stitches, double crochet, double crochet. I will see you when you get close to the end of this round. Just completing row 2, I've done my last cluster of puff stitches. I need to skip 2 stitches, and one little tip with this row, if your stitch count is out, be sure to check right next to your clusters because there is often a stitch hiding there. So skip 2, 1, 2, and I need to do double crochet in the last 2 stitches of this round. I'm going to remove my stitch marker. And that ends around row 2. For row 3, we need to turn our work. I've just added a stitch marker into the last stitch of this row just to help us identify where we need to work into for row 3. So turn our work, and we begin with a chain 3. 1, 2, 3. This does count as the first double crochet of the row. What we need to do now is 2 double crochets into that same stitch. So you can see I've marked with a stitch marker here, I need to go back into that space to do my 2 double crochets. One and 2. And what you might also like to do is mark the top of your chain 3 so that when you get to the end of the next row you know where to stop. Row 3 is the beginning of our 2-row repeating pattern which we will use for the remainder of this washcloth. So I'm going to point out the pattern and then I'm going to show you how you can easily identify what you need to do for the remaining rounds. What we're going to start with is skipping the next double crochet and our first puff stitch. And what we're going to do is a double crochet in between this first and second puff stitch. Double crochet into there, and another double crochet in between the second and third puff stitches. So from here on, for the remainder of the washcloth, wherever you see a cluster of puff stitches, you'll be doing a double crochet in between the first 2 puff stitches and a double crochet in between the next 2 puff stitches. What we do now is we skip the next puff stitch, we skip our first double crochet, and we're going to do a cluster of puff stitches in between these 2 double crochets. So same as in the previous row, we're doing 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. Pull that through, chain to finish that, and again 1, 2, 3. Chain to finish that. Another puff stitch. 1, 2, 3. Chain to finish that. There's my cluster of 3 puff stitches. So now what I do is I skip this double crochet, I skip our first puff stitch, and again double crochet in between them. Double crochet in between the next 2 puff stitches, and then I skip over to our double crochets from the previous row and I do a cluster of puff stitches in between them. So that is our repeating pattern for this row. Whenever we see 2 double crochets, we're going to do a cluster of 3 puff stitches, then we're going to do a double crochet in between these puff stitches, skip over, cluster of puff stitches in between these double crochets, and so on. I recommend pausing the video here and I will see you when you get close to the end of this row. Just completing row 3, I've done my last cluster of puff stitches and I've done a double crochet in between the first and second and third puff stitch of the previous row. From here I'm going to skip over to the top of my third chain, which will be here, and I'm going to do 3 double crochets into the top of that chain. One, 2, and 3. On this row we end up with 1, 2, 3, 4 clusters of puff stitches. To begin row 4, we turn our work and we chain 3. 1, 2, 3. For row 4 in every even row, we're going to do a double crochet in between the first 2 double crochets of our previous row. So in that space there, double crochet into there. Then we skip the next 2 double crochets And this third one, we have 2 double crochets here, so we know that in between 2 double crochets we work a cluster of puff stitches. So that's what we're doing in this space here. 1, 2, 3, and over, pull that through, chain to finish, 1, 2, 3, yarn over, pull that through, chain to finish, yarn over, 1, 2, 3, yarn over, pull that through, chain 1 to finish. And as is our repeating pattern, whenever we see a cluster of puff stitches, we do a double crochet in between the first 2 and a double crochet in between the next 2. We'll then skip over to our next 2 double crochets and do a cluster of puff stitches in between there. So continue with this pattern all the way across, and I will see you at the end of this row. Just completing row 4, done my last cluster of puff stitches, so now I'm going to do a double crochet in between the last 2 double crochets of the previous row, so in between them, and a double crochet into the top of that last double crochet. That is the end of row 4. You now continue to repeat those 2 rows, row 3 and 4, until you get up to row 20. So you'll do row 3 another 8 times and row 4 another 8 times. You'll know row 3, or the odd rows, because they will have 4 clusters of puff stitches, and row 4 and all even rows will have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The only difference between the 2 rows is the start and the end. For the odd rows, row 3, you'll have 3 double crochets at the end of those rows, and they are done in the very last stitches. For row 4 and every even row from here, you'll have a double crochet at the very edge, and then you'll have a double crochet in between the last 2 double crochets of the previous row. Apart from that, you can just continue to repeat the patterns, knowing that you'll do a double crochet in between the clusters, and you'll do a cluster of puff stitches in between the 2 double crochets. So enjoy. I will see you when you get to the end of row 20. I've just completed row 20. I'm going to show you how to count the rows so you know where you're up to. Row 1 is down here. We started with a row of single crochet. So row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So that is the end of my 20th row. For row 21, we first need to turn our work, and we'll be single crocheting along this row. So we start with a chain 1 and a single crochet into that exact same stitch. So the base of that chain, I'm going to do a single crochet. First stitch of the row, I'm going to add a stitch marker to this one. We're now going to do a single crochet into the top of the next stitch, which is a double crochet from the previous row, so into this space here. And now we're going to do a single crochet into the first stitch of the next puff stitch. For this pattern, the designer always uses the first part, the first loop from the puff stitch, as being the one on the right. So this is the first, this is the second, this is the first, this is the second, and so on, and it will change depending on the row, but always the one on the right is our first stitch. So we're going to single crochet into that first stitch there, we're going to single crochet between the 2 puff stitches. We're going to single crochet on top of the next puff stitch into that first loop again. Single crochet between the 2 puff stitches, and single crochet into the second loop of the next puff stitch. If I turn it slightly, first one is on the right, second is on the left. So we're going to single crochet into the second one this time. Once we've done that, this becomes our repeating pattern. We're going to do a single crochet into the next 2 stitches, which are our double crochet stitches. Single crochet into the first one, single crochet into the second one, and we're back to our cluster of puff stitches again. Single crochet into the first loop of the first puff stitch. Trying to turn my work so you can see. First loop is here, second loop is there. So into the first one, single crochet between the 2 puff stitches, single crochet into that first loop again. Here's my first, here's my second. I want to go into the first one, single crochet between those 2 puff stitches, single crochet this time not into the first but into the second loop, and we repeat that all the way across. So single crochet into the top of the 2 double crochets, single crochet into the first of our puff stitch, single crochet in between, single crochet into the first, single crochet in between, single crochet into the second loop, and on top of the double crochets. Continue with that across this row, and I will see you at the end of this row. Just completing row 21, I've done a single crochet into the first loop of the puff stitch in between, first loop of the second puff stitch in between. I'm now going to do a single crochet into the second loop of the third puff stitch, and I finish this row off by doing a single crochet on top of the next 2 stitches, which is our double crochet from the previous row and our chain 3, which is what we started the previous row with. And that is the end of row 21. As you can see, the main body of our washcloth is now done. We just now need to do the border. To begin round 22, we turn our work again, and we are working back along the row we just completed. So to do that, we start with a chain 1, and then we're going to do 2 single crochets into that exact same stitch. One is the first stitch here, so I'm going to add a stitch marker, and 2 to that exact same space. And now we're going to do single crochets into every stitch across, so that'll be the next 35 stitches. I recommend pausing the video here, continue doing your single crochets all the way across, and I will see you when you get towards the end of this row. Just coming up to the end of my first side, doing my last few single crochets. This stitch marker here lets me know it's the end of the row, so what I need to do, take that out, and I do 3 single crochets into the very last stitch. 1, 2, 3. What I'm going to do here is add a stitch marker into the middle one of those 3. That tells me that's the very corner of my washcloth. Turning it around, this side is our edge, and it's not as clear cut to pick up the stitches. We need to pick up 38 stitches across here. Best way to do that is to be very even. So try and map out firstly where you're going to put those stitches and see if it adds up to 38 so that you know you're going to be doing them evenly and in the right spaces. If I pull it apart, I've already worked out that I need to get into every one of these gaps. So one stitch here, one stitch here, one stitch here, one stitch here, one stitch in that gap there, one stitch there, one stitch there, one stitch there, and so on, and that will give me 38 stitches. So turn it around, make sure you count and you're as even as you can. One, looking for that gap just here, two, looking for that next space which is here, three, to that next space, four, next space, 5, 6. I'm going to continue with this, seeing how it looks consistent, evenly spaced. That's what we're after. I recommend pausing the video here, continue to pick up your 38 stitches, and I'll see you when you get closer to the next corner. Just completing that second edge. I'm currently up to 35 stitches that I've picked up. 36, 37, and that last space, 38. You can see they're fairly consistently picked up along that edge. What we need to do now in this very corner is 3 stitches, 3 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, and again I'm going to use a stitch marker to mark the middle of one of those 3 stitches, just because that will now be my second corner. Turning this around, and we need to get 35 stitches along the bottom, and this will be easy to see because they will be the other side of your foundation chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. I'm going to pick up the top of each one of these. Well, I'll go underneath actually, so there'll be 2 loops on top of my hook. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can pause the video here, continue with your single crochets all the way across, and I'll see you at the next corner. Just completing this next edge, and I've got 32, 33, 34, 35. This one here is the last chain on this row of my foundation chain. So in this one I need to do 3 single crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Again, adding a stitch marker into that middle stitch so that I know where the corner is. Turn my work again, and we're up to our last edge. Again, this is like our opposite edge over here where it's not clear cut stitches. What you need to do is plan out where you're going to place your stitches to try and pick up 38. Again, I've gone through and I note that if I get in between the space, the larger gap, the space, the larger gap, space, gap, and so on, I will end up with 38 stitches. What you can do on this edge is crochet over your tail from the start of your work. So go in over the top of that. 1 to the next space, 2, that next gap, 3, 4, here, 5, 6, and so on. Pause the video here, continue single crocheting along there, picking up your 38 stitches, and I will see you at the other end of this side. Just finishing off that last side, currently on 35. I'm going to go in here, 36, into this space, 37, and into this last space here, 38. To finish off this row, I do another single crochet into the first single crochet of the round. So that same space that I did our first 2 single crochets in, that's where I'm going to do the next single crochet. Then I'm going to slip stitch over to that first single crochet, which is here. So slip stitch to that first single crochet, and now we have 3 single crochets in that base stitch there, which makes another even corner. That's the end of that row. I've now completed 1 row all the way around. As you can see, it's not quite square yet, a little bit uneven, but that's okay because the next row will help to square that out a little bit more. For round 23, we don't need to turn our work. Instead, we continue straight from here. We're going to do a chain 1 and a single crochet, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and single crochet back into that same space. And that is our first corner done. To continue, we do a single crochet, we chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we do a single crochet into the next 2 stitches. 1, 2, chain 3 again, 1, 2, 3, and single crochet into the next 2 stitches. 1, 2. That's our repeating pattern. You need to repeat that a total of 8 times. So I will see you after you've done 8 of these, which will be around the middle of this edge. Halfway around this round, and as you can see, not including the corner, I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. For this one in the middle, we chain 3 again, 1, 2, 3, but this time we do a single crochet into the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. We then finish off this row the same way, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, single crochet into the next 2 stitches. 1, 2, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, single crochet into the next 2 stitches. Continue this and I will meet you at the next corner. Coming up to my first corner, in the middle here is where I've done my 3 single crochet, and since then I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just done my 8th lot of chain 3 and 2 single crochets. To finish off this edge, a chain 3 again, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do a single crochet into the next stitch. This is the corner of my work, and in the corner I'm going to do a single crochet, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, single crochet again into that corner, and that is that first edge completed. I now continue around I do a single crochet into the next stitch, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, single crochet into the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, and I simply repeat that pattern across the whole edge. I don't need to stop in the middle to do 3 single crochets. The whole way across I'm going to do 3 chain, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 single crochets. You can pause the video here, continue repeating that pattern across the whole edge, and I'll see you when you get to the next corner. Coming up to my second corner, and I do my corner the same as I did previously. So I've done my chain, I've done my 2 single crochets, so I chain again, 1, 2, 3, and then I do a single crochet into the next stitch, and my corner stitch is done the same way as well. So single crochet, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, single crochet again, and that's the corner done. That's 2 edges done now of our washcloth. The remaining 2 edges are done exactly the same. So this edge over here is done the same as this one, where you repeat the pattern but you stop in the middle to do 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and then this last edge is done exactly the same as this one, where it's the repeating pattern all the way across, chain 3, 2 single crochets. I'm going to suggest pausing the video here, finishing off your last 2 edges. So it's done the same way, repeat the pattern, make sure you repeat it 8 times, you stop in the middle to do 3 single crochets, and then you continue repeating to the end. At the corner, same deal, you do your single crochet, 3 chain single crochet, and then you'd repeat the pattern across the last edge, chain 3, 2 single crochet, chain 3, 2 single crochet all the way to the edge, and I will meet you at the very end here. Coming around to the final edge, I'm going to do another chain 3 into the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, chain 3 again, 1, 2, 3, and finish that off with my last single crochet. All I need to do now is slip stitch that into our very first stitch here. And that completes our washcloth. And as you can see, that border does finish it off quite nicely. I need to block my work just to stretch that out a little bit in the middle, but it's already a lot straighter than it was previously. From here, just cut off your ends and sew them in, and that is the end of the Nenloth washcloth. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Hope to see you on some of my other Pamper projects or my other projects available on my YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me today.